Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about the third movie that I saw this week. That is The Pope's Exorcist. This is a supernatural horror film slash thriller slash mystery directed by Julius Avery and stars Russell Crowe as Father Gabriel Amorth, I believe his name is. And this is a real-life priest who allegedly performed thousands of exorcisms back in the day. I wish I would have picked up on what time period this was set in. I really feel like I should know, but it popped up on screen at one point. Regardless, so in the movie, Amorth, played by Russell Crowe, is faced with his toughest challenge yet as he needs to perform an exorcism on this boy who is possessed by a particularly powerful demon. And I'll try to keep this one fairly brief, not because this movie was particularly awful or anything, it's just that there's not too much to really dive into and break down with the plot. I always roll my eyes whenever I hear that there's a new religious sort of subgenre horror possession film coming out, because I feel like all of them, or at least a vast majority of the subgenre, is sort of held up to the standard that is 1973's The Exorcist, and nothing has been able to match up to that. 95% of these movies are pure junk. I will say, The Pope's Exorcist exceeded my expectations. Problem is, that's not really saying much, especially considering some of the more recent entries into the genre being stuff like last year's Pray for the Devil and this year's Consecration, both films that I absolutely loathe. And right from the get-go, I'll say a lot of the tropes that you're used to seeing in this type of film are front and present, they're there. But I'm surprised by how well executed certain scenes in this movie are. Julius Avery is really channeling his sort of experience from making the film Overlord with the gore and the body distortions. That stuff is executed well. Again, it's nothing that you haven't seen before. I just found that it was more effective here than in most of the entries into this subgenre that I've seen in the last couple of years. The sort of initial possession of this young boy and the cinematography and camera moves that were used to sort of show this happening were surprisingly decent. And I feel that it goes without saying, but Russell Crowe is great in the movie. This is probably actually one of my more favorite performances of the year so far. It's a shame the movie as a whole isn't that great, because Russell Crowe is giving his all here. I really enjoy the performance. The problem is the dialogue is quite rough. At times, it's just employing all of these tropes that we've seen time and time again. Like, they talk about holy water, they talk about absolving yourself of your sins before you attempt an exorcism because, you know, demons can sense that and they'll use it against you. It's just all of these tropes that are being piled on and sort of subduing what could have been a better film. A lot of incomprehensible prayers as they attempt to sort of find different ways to perform this exorcism. And of course, Russell Crowe's character goes on a path of sort of uncovering secrets of the property that the initial possession took place inside of. That aspect of the movie, I just didn't really care about that much. I cared more about learning about Russell Crowe's character because they actually do sort of give him a little bit of an interesting twist. The closest thing that this movie has to actual commentary or any sort of depth involves Russell Crowe's character sort of explaining his backstory, and it sort of involves some mental health and illness type of subjects. I don't really want to get into it because, again, this movie doesn't have many surprises, but that was one of them. I didn't think they would try an angle like that. I'm not saying it elevates the film to like extraordinary levels or anything like that, but I appreciate that they tried something. But the middle act of this movie is really a big drag. I was kind of dozing off a little bit in the middle chunk. First act, not too bad. Third act, we'll talk about in a minute, but that middle chunk drags it down significantly. Another problem is I didn't really care too much about the family of the boy who was possessed. Again, he was fine because, you know, you see him as just an innocent child, and the actor that plays him does a really good job with the facial expressions and stuff like that. But his sister and his mother, they just aren't given too much to work with. I thought their acting was fine. The dialogue at times was atrocious. I couldn't believe how bad it was. Again, when all these other elements are working in the film's favor, and then the dialogue is just terrible, and they're just not given enough depth to really care about them and want to see them succeed. The third act, and here I'm talking about like the final like 15 or 20 minutes or so, goes completely bonkers mode. And I don't know if that makes me respect the movie more or less, because on one hand, like at least they really went for it, but it doesn't mesh well with the first two acts of this movie, which were sort of going for a more grounded take on possession, regardless of whether or not you believe in demons being real. Clearly, there are cases where they take that sort of subject and try to go for a more realistic approach of what demonic possession could actually look like. The third act of this movie throws all of that out the window and just goes full craziness. I don't know, I think it would have left a better taste in my mouth if they didn't immediately go for a sequel bait ending that just, again, employs horrible dialogue, and of course, sequel baiting is just something that I hate, especially a movie like The Pope's Exorcist. This could have been a good one-off. It doesn't need a sequel. In the end, guys, there is some craft on display in The Pope's Exorcist. The problem is, it really just feels like the same story that we've seen over and over again in this subgenre, just with a really expensive coat of paint and a few unique ideas. There just isn't quite enough to make it something that I would recommend. I'm going to give it a 2.5 out of 5. It's the third movie that I've given in a row that rating after Renfield and Mafia Mama. I think this is comparatively a little better than Mafia Mama, maybe around the same level as Renfield in terms of quality. It could be worse, but it sure as hell could have been a whole lot better based on some of the stronger elements that I was seeing in here. There you have it, guys. Those are my takes on The Pope's Exorcist. As always, I want to know what you think of the movie down below. If you haven't seen it, what is your favorite movie involving exorcism and possession that isn't The Exorcist from 1973? Because I think most people would say that's their number one. As always, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.